Okay, so the attendees have started coming in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Future of Work Summit, Day 2. Please let us know where you're coming from, where you're joining in from in the chat room. Tell us your name, the name of your city. Just let us know you're here. Welcome as we wait for people to join in before we kick off. Welcome. Okay, we have people coming in. All right, I think we're good. Yes, I see you, Damilola from Lagos, Nigeria. Joy Williams from Berkeley, California. Welcome. Well, this is going to be exciting. Welcome. If you were here yesterday, you could also indicate, oh, I see Selgi from Korea. I'm joining from Japan. Wow, that's great. If you were here yesterday, let us know and let us know how it was for you. Today is really going to be exciting. Have an exciting lineup. So officially, you're welcome to the Future of Work Summit. We'll start our recording now. This is the Future of Work Summit 2020, and the theme for this summit is the barriers and enablers in Africa. The Future of Work Summit is brought to us by the Stirring for Greatness Foundation. This is a foundation that has a mission to create systems that inspires, teaches, nurtures, and empowers teenagers all over the world. And we are very excited to be hosting, day 2. I am your moderator for this session, and my name is Echika Obijiako. I am joining in from Lagos, Nigeria. And I see a lot of people coming in from all over the world. Wow, someone said yesterday was very powerful and inspirational. That's amazing. Today is going to be even bigger because we have a powerhouse with us in the house this morning. And I hope you're ready with your notepads. It's going to be exciting. Today, the topic for this session is the gender and the future of work. Gender and the future of work. And we have someone in the house with us, and I'm just going to talk to us about, our speaker. Her name is Professor Maria Guajardo, and Professor Maria has served as a professor, a dean, and vice president at Soka University, Tokyo. Her research is focused on global leaders, gender, leadership, and inclusive excellence. Professor Maria comes with so many strong points. Professor Maria is a pillar in terms of education. And I'm going to tell you something very exciting about Professor Maria Guajardo. If you can go to your browser by the side and just type out her name, Professor Maria has a Wikipedia page, and you need to read up on her bio. It is powerful. Professor Maria, through an initiative called, the Lights On After School Partnership, she enabled funding for more than 700 after-school programs, servicing more than 50,000 students. That's just amazing. And, she has a depth in psychology. Sometime in 1988, the professor studied reasons for educational attainment. What she did is she tried to ask the question, what is it that allows students to succeed in education? It's mind-blowing what the result was. And this is after an interview with over 600 families and, students inclusive. The results showed that strong relationships with encouraging figures, particularly mothers, was a reason for students succeeding in school. Professor Maria has, her experience with community development, her experience with youth development. It's amazing. And so we are, here to learn from this fountain of knowledge. I'm really excited, about this. So I'm going to bring Professor Maria up in a bit, but I just want to share with us, about the gender and the future of work. Life as we know it is changing. Thanks to the pandemic, COVID-19, virtuality is practically forced on the entire world. And so we need to know how to position ourselves so that we are better, we remain relevant, we remain relevant in whatever we're doing in the future, our professions or whatever line we choose to follow in remains relevant. And today we're going to be delving into that topic. Professor Maria is going to be dissecting that for us and also talking about it from the angle of gender as well. So Professor Maria, I'm going to bring you up now. But I have a question. First of all, you know, when you have sessions, people always have expectations for the sessions. But what I want to ask you today is, Maria, what is your expectation for this session?
Echika, thank you so much for that question. And you know, in my 30 years of public speaking, my quest is always to touch one person's heart. One person. And that would be my expectation for today, that somehow the information lands where it needs to land, and that everyone hopefully can take one takeaway from this, but to touch one person's heart.
That's powerful. That's powerful. So one person, and I don't know if you hope to be that one person, but I am all here with my notes ready to dig in. So Professor Maria, we're all yours. Please take us all.
Thank you so much. And so I'm going to share my screen here. All right.
Great. We see your first slide, Maria.
All right. Perfect, Echika. Well, you know, when I was invited to join you in this webinar, the topic, the theme seemed so big and so daunting. And I really had to sit and understand for myself what would be the most important. And I have learned over the years that, you know, like Peter Senge says, who's a thought leader in management, we can either solve problems or we can create solutions. And I'm here to ask us all to have a forward focus and to really turn towards that solution-making process. And in order to do that, we have to be curious. We have to be able to explore, to question. And why is this important now? This is important because what we know is that if we're looking at gender equity, it is going to take, according to the World Economic Forum, almost 100 years in order to achieve full parity between men and women, going at the rate that we are going. And this was before the pandemic, 100 years. And this is an average. In some countries, they're already there, a few countries. In other countries, like the country that I live in now, Japan, it's projected that it will take 250 years. And I just don't think that we can wait. We absolutely cannot wait for someone else to do the job. And so what I do know as we think about the future workforce is that there is inequity by sector. So whether it's education, health, technology, we're going to be looking at varying degrees of inequity. So let's just take the health sector for an example. Right now in global health, 7 out of 10 leaders, 70% of the leaders are men. But if we look at who the workers are in this sector, 70% of the workers are female. And females comprise less than 10% of the leaders in this sector. And so is the problem there? Absolutely. Do we have to analyze the problem? We can analyze it in terms of statistics, but the rationale is already there. The inequity exists. And the question is, what do we want to do about that? You know, over time, I have come to understand that not much has changed. As I was a little girl, when I was a little girl, growing up, I was invisible. I was this brown-skinned migrant child growing up in the United States. And never in 1,000 years would I have imagined that I would be a professor, and certainly not a professor in Japan. And why is that? Well, I didn't grow up in a community of wealth. My parents were immigrants from Mexico to the United States. My father was a peasant farmer. never went to school, had no formal education. My mother went as far as second grade. Between the two of them, they have never read a book. Both of them are illiterate. And so they left their home, they left their community, they left everything. And they traveled north from Mexico to the United States with the clothes on their back and 3 small children in tow. When they reached and crossed over to the United States, 3 more of us were born. So 6 children, 2 immigrants who became agricultural workers. There is no way that I should have had the position, or that I should have the position I have today. Growing up, Spanish was my first language. I did not learn English until I started in about second grade. And then when I graduated from high school, I think over those 12 years, I began to capture this curiosity that I think my parents fostered in us, to be curious about the world, to be curious about what we cannot even begin to imagine. And so I, over time, began to understand that I cannot be what I cannot see. And so in order to look forward, to have that forward focus, I chose to be curious. And I'm asking you to choose to be curious. Because yes, the gender inequities exist. Yes, the future workforce is unknown. If you stop and think about it, we're preparing you for jobs that do not even exist yet. Think about that. You are trying to figure out what foundational skills do you need for jobs. 70% of the jobs that will be created by the year 2030 and later do not exist today. So how do we prepare you for the unknown? I would suggest to you that we have to have this perspective that we're going to make the impossible possible. Because that little girl standing in those grape vineyards, whose parents were working for $1 a day, 12 hours of hard labor, never could have imagined a better future. And yet, because it should have been impossible for all of this to happen. And I would say to you today that whatever you're embarking upon may feel impossible, but we need to be able to grab on and create out of our curiosity a new solution. And what will it take? Because that's really the $1 million question. What will it take? You know, at Soka University, I teach leadership, and I'm happy to see some of my students, current and former students, on the webinar today. And I'm sending you a big hello and a big hug. What you've heard me say 1,000 times, and what I continue to say today, is we need to know who we are. Leadership begins with a sense of self. You need to be able to define yourself by your values, your non-negotiables, your strengths, your non-talents. But this doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's not just listing your just, you know, a list of descriptors of yourself, but it's really taking the time to understand what are your passions? What is your purpose? Why do you do what you do? That is what leadership is about. If we're going to create an equitable workforce in the future, starting tomorrow, we need to have leadership to step into that vacuum that currently exists. Now, it's not easy. And what I would say is that sometimes we're possessed by fear. So this is Maria. This is me and my fear. Lots of things get me scared. And growing up, and even as I was a young adult and then middle-aged and now my age, there's always been situations and experiences that create fear. The unknown, this pandemic, there's so much that is unstable. And yet we have a choice once again. We can choose to be paralyzed by that fear, or we can choose to dance with our fear. And that is a very conscious choice. So I chose to dance with my fear. Whether I was climbing the Himalayas or swimming in the ocean, in the Galapagos Islands, 2 events that absolutely instilled fear in my body, I had to ask, what will I do about this? Am I going to step back? or am I going to step forward? And that choice has to be a conscious choice, because that road, that journey that we're about to embark upon, that journey, there's a saying that says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. I would suggest to you that we have to be conscious about what road we want today to take. So on the one hand, we have fear. And so you have to begin to think about, what choice will you make about how you deal with your fear? We also have to foster trust. We have to learn how to trust ourselves, how to trust others. Effective leaders in this practice of leadership develop trust with followers. Effective leaders develop relationships. Effective leaders continue to be curious about what's coming up. And in doing this, it's not just a thought process, but we have to be able to take action. We have to move with our trust. We have to move with our fear. We have to take action and make the invisible visible. We have to be able to name what has not been named. For example, if you're invited to a meeting, who's missing? Who's missing? Who should be in the room? If decisions are being made, policy decisions, who is missing from that decision-making process? And so we have to be able to think, how invisible or visible am I? Who sees me? Who doesn't see me? And in this process, I would suggest to you, in this crossroads of opportunity that we have today, if we're going to follow Peter Senge's philosophy of creating solutions, not just managing problems, I would suggest to you that we have to begin to develop a strength of voice. And what do I mean by that? Inequity, equity, justice, diversity, that will only happen. The change, the positive change that we want, will only happen when we have discovered the strength of our voice. To be able to weigh in when we're afraid and we feel like, well, I'm too young, I don't know enough. I'm whatever your anxious feeling might be or fear, to have the strength of voice, that presence to say, my voice matters. And for many of you, you will be the voice for others. You will be the one who will have an opportunity at the table. And if you don't speak up, then who will? So being that messenger, having that sense of voice is very important. Now, while I may do public speaking now, this wasn't always the case. When I was young, high school, and maybe there's some high school students on the webinar today, I was the student, even in college, who never raised her hand. I might have known the answer, but I just believed everybody was smarter, better communicator. They knew and I did not, even when I knew the answer. And if I did respond to a question the teacher asked, I was the student whose voice trembled, my palms got sweaty. And yet over time, I discovered my voice. I don't want to sound like anyone else. And imagine, no one can replace you. No one can fulfill the position that you will contribute to. So strength of voice. We also need to have a strength of vision. I said earlier, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. That strength of vision to be able to chart, to imagine, to innovate what has not been created yet. And this is how old I am. I'm so old that when I was doing my master's work, when I was doing papers in college or in high school, I had a typewriter. Computers weren't around, right? Now we carry these little devices called cell phones, right? And it's like having a mini computer in your pocket or in your purse. And then fast forward, now everybody has that access. Almost everyone does. So how we incorporate our vision to be able to maximize the resources that are around us. And then strength of heart. Nothing happens without relationships. Leadership does not happen without relationships. Innovation does not happen without that network of collaborators. I don't care who you are. And so we need to look to one another, especially during this time. The future of the workforce, and you had a fabulous speaker yesterday who listed all of these competencies that we were going to need in the future workforce. And they were competencies like being able to work on teams, having emotional intelligence, being an individual with a global mindset. All of that is important. And so that strength of heart, that strength of vision, and that strength of voice. Now, this is a time of change, and even I'm being asked to do new things. Until I came to Soka University, I wasn't a professor. I was an executive director of offices. I managed programs and people and policies. And then I came to Soka University. I came to Japan 7 years ago. And in my administrative position, I was also asked to teach. And I discovered that I love teaching. I discovered there's magic in the classroom. And I discovered that this was my passion. And maybe I had always been teaching, but it had never been in a formal teaching position. And so I realized last semester, this is one of the final classes for my global leadership course. I realized that it was such a gift to be in the presence of young people, to learn from them. And then COVID-19 appeared and my classroom became this. And yet I still needed to build community. I still needed to build relationships. And here's a graphic, a photo capturing us this Thursday, past Thursday. And I decided that we would call it Crazy Hair Day. And so you can see my students with their crazy hairdos. It was great. And I asked them, what does Crazy Hair Day have to do with leadership? And they looked at each other and said, I don't know. And then they went into small groups and they had to discuss it. And it was fabulous. They began to say, you know, we have to be comfortable being silly, using humor. We are all unique. We all have a presence that we want to be able to share. And that was exactly the leadership lesson, the leadership moment that I was hoping to foster. And so as we think about the workforce, the future workforce, as we think about gender inequity, what will happen between young men, young women, how will times change? I would close by saying to you, choose to be curious. Choose to be curious, choose to question. You know, effective leaders aren't the people with all the answers. Effective leaders are those that are willing to ask questions, those that are willing to listen. Be that leader. My job as a professor, and I say this to my students every semester, my job is to raise the next generation of leaders. And in order to do that, I need to guide this learning experience so that all of us can be curious, all of us can question, and all of us can take time to look deep, to really grab our core and our essence. James Baldwin, one of my favorite writers, African-American man, wrote a book called The Invisible Man. And one sentence from that book says, we learn who we are by how others perceive us. We learn who we are by how others perceive us. So if the world perceives you as less than, as inadequate, ineffective, then you believe that too. And what I would suggest to you today is that's thinking of the past, but let's look forward. How do you want to be perceived? What would you do if you knew you could not fail? I would encourage you to make the impossible possible. Imagine, what would you hope for? And then be a co-creator. Don't allow the old people like me in your environment to limit you. Don't let us do that. For the young women, imagine, what would you do if you knew you could not fail? Would you become a college president? Would you become a social entrepreneur? Would you become, what would you become? A community organizer? In order to do all of that, we must make the invisible visible. The gap between the rich and poor, the North and South, is growing. Our job is to make sure that we see every single human being in front of us, to bow to them deeply, to acknowledge who they are, their capacity, their potential, so that we can link arms and move forward together. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen now. Great. And so just to wrap this up, you know, I don't think there's any easy answers. But what I do know is that we can't allow fear and the unknown to stop us. We have to be able to imagine possibilities. We have to move past our fear. Whether you're finishing your master's thesis, whether you've just graduated and you don't know what your job might be, whether someone has asked to be in a relationship with you and you're wondering, should I, shouldn't I? I mean, these are all important questions. Don't minimize how valuable you are. There's no quick answer to solving the problems that many of us older adults created for you. But what I would say to you is that the solutions will only come if you value yourself as much as I value you today. So with that, I'd love to hear reactions. I'd love to be challenged with your tough questions. Please let me know.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's been a very inspirational session. I think it had a lot of take-homes for me. You kept stressing curiosity. And I think one thing that stood out is the battle for success first starts with your mind, you know, your belief in yourself. Once you've won it up there, you will win it, you know, physically. So you need to be curious enough to believe that you can make the impossible possible. And, you know, you said, what will you do if you knew you could not fail? I think that's powerful, and that's the mindset we should all go with. And if we go with that mindset, we will be able to, you know, erase that fear, either the fear of failure or whatever it's coming from. You also talked about, how do you define yourself? You know, it's amazing that a lot of us may have never had that opportunity to sit back and actually ask questions. You know, there's this thing I do often. I call it like a self-review time I have with myself, and I ask myself very honest questions. I try to understand some patterns, and then I ask very close friends, what do you think about this? What do I do well? What don't I do well? You know, ask. But ultimately, I have to still gather all that and come to myself. Whatever I feel about myself is who I am, and I must have a very high value of myself. So it's important that we sit down and actually define, you know, how do we define ourselves, you know, answer that question. Because like you said, if the whole world thinks you're not great, you know, then you would see yourself as not great. Dance with your fear. What I've noticed is, you know, fear, there will always be fear. It's either a fear of failure or fear of one or, you know, things, you know, there will always be fear. And it's important that we begin to learn to find a way to, should I say, collaborate with that fear. And in collaboration, we mean dancing with the fear, rather than allowing the fear limit us from where we ought to, you know, be. And then you said develop the strength, and you talked about the strength of voice, the strength of vision, and the strength of a heart. It's very important that we have a voice. What was so profound was when you talked about how you might be the voice for others. So if you never speak up, you've shut down the opportunity for them. So it's important to see yourself as a leader, even when you don't even have visible followers. But because you perceive yourself as a leader, you must always grow that strength of voice. And then the strength of vision, you have to be able to know there is more. see further. You know, you gave the example of the cell phones, and very soon, you know, the world is changing. What we know as cell phones may become something else tomorrow. Things are being stored in the cloud. The world is changing, and we need to believe that those impossibilities we think are impossible in our mind are possible. Heart, relationship, that is very, very profound. You need the strength of relationships to forge ahead. That I think is very, very strong. And I think for the women as well, when the speaker of yesterday talked about the 10 skills that you need to develop in 2020, you know, and above, what was very exciting about that is Stirring for Greatness had something they call the Future Readiness Tour, where they went around to public schools in Lagos, Nigeria, trying to educate them about those skills. And that impacted over 1,000 students, female students, you know, all over, not just female, sorry, students generally, all over Lagos. And what if if females look closely at those skill sets, we have some that are naturally kind of given to us. Emotional intelligence, communication, the feminine gender has that naturally bestowed to her. But if she can just see that she has a leverage over the others, she can build on that, you know, and run and ensure that she remains relevant in whatever she chooses, you know, to do. So we're going to take some questions. I have one question to start with. I see the questions are already dropping in. So I have one question, and then we're just going to go right, you know, into it. So, so my question is this for the women. How vulnerable are women's jobs, you know, to the risk of displacement by technology? Or, you know, how vulnerable are the jobs of females to the risk of displacement by technology?
Okay, so Echika, if you will indulge me, I'm going to reframe your question.
Okay, that's right.
I don't think that's the question we should be asking, because that question is looking in the back and saying, that's a problem. How do we solve that problem? And what we need today, Echika, are solutions. So I think we should be asking, how can women inform the role and use of technology? How can women's brilliance and creativity and innovation of perspective, we need it more than ever. Look at who is solving COVID-19 in their countries, right? Headline after headline is saying women, whether it's in New Zealand, in Germany, in Taiwan, it's the women who are leading, transparent, leading, having that sense of empathy and decision-making, right? So I don't think we need to look backwards. I think we need to look forward and say, women need to be at the table, shaping the role of technology.
That's right. That's right. That's fantastic, Maria. We have a question from one of the attendees. The person says, how can I overcome my procrastination and what needs to be done? How can I find my passion? So the person is asking, how can I overcome my procrastination and how can I find my passion?
What I would say to you is that the two things are not related. Moving forward, we need to have a sense of purpose, right? So sometimes students come to me and say, I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. You don't have to know today because the world's going to change 1,000 times over. What I want to know is, what is your purpose today? What is your passion today? Separate from that, there's the question of procrastination. And so I would again like to reframe that. I think that when I have not met a deadline, or today I had my entryway to clean, right? I mean, this is like real life. I don't like cleaning. I'm sorry, but I do not like cleaning. And I knew it was going to take over an hour and it was grunge work. I didn't want to do it. I procrastinated for weeks and I finally had to do it today. And I realized, and I was telling my son this, I said, I wanted to be able to breathe again. And as long as I didn't take that first step, I wasn't I wasn't able to be me.
Yeah.
So I think procrastination is us pausing and saying, I'm afraid, I'm fearful. I mean, what if? What if I finish this? Yeah. So purpose, and procrastination is a pause managed by fear. And we need to get to the question, what do you do to manage your fear?
Okay, we have a question, but I see some of your students already in the chat room trying to answer it. Someone asked, can you please talk about what the students discussed and took away from the Crazy Hair Day? As Joy Williams is asking, can you please talk about what the students discussed and took away from the Crazy Hair Day?
Yes. So, you know, it was one of those impromptu, oh my gosh, how do I make this relevant? Right? You talked about relevance, Echika. How do we become relevant? Right? I am a firm believer that everything in our midst has relevance. Yeah. Everything happens for a reason. And so it was amazing. I didn't have an answer charted out to this question. And that was the beauty, because when I released the 35 students into breakout rooms and they had to tackle the question, I was blown away at what they were the ones who came up with, well, you know, Crazy Hair Day reveals our unique nature, and that's what leadership is. Or I had to be brave to wear my blue hair today. And when we're leaders, we have to be brave. We can't be intimidated by what people might think of us.
That's right.
Right? So there were many takeaways.
Thank you so much, Maria. We have another question. How do you handle the fear? I think you've talked on this, but we're still going to ask it. How do you handle fear of the unknown from known reality?
I think it's a spirit of openness. And I think that, this is a great question, actually. Now, how do I handle it? I think because I have really taken time to understand who I am, I can go back to my values. I can go back to my boundaries. I can go to my non-negotiables. I can go to that sense of cultural strength. Yes, I'm Mexicana, and I live in Japan, and I don't speak Japanese, but guess what? This is what I do. Right? So I think that in those moments of unknown, I hold on to what's most precious about me. So I would really encourage everyone to examine and to answer. Write it down at the end of this webinar, right? What is most precious about you? Take a deep breath. What is most precious about you? And I know that if I were to read that list, I would just burst into tears because it would be so profound. So whether it's Joy or Sugi or Gloria or Maine or some of the names that I've seen pop up, write that list. What is most precious about you?
That's profound. Thank you, Maria. Another question from Jisoo. He says, I have a dream, but hesitate to take even a small step because my dream seems so big and hard. How can I start taking a step? Still, procrastination.
First of all, I am so happy you asked that question. Really, I am so happy because I think you are asking a question that so many others are holding on to. Like, I can't, that's too big. Like, maybe I should play it safe. Maybe I should do something that's expected of me. I'm a female. Maybe I come from South Korea and I'm only supposed to be this much, but not that much. Right? And so what I would say to you, your focus is off. Your focus should not be on how do I get to that big dream? Your focus should be on what is most precious about me. In Spanish, we have this word preciosa. So it's almost like a direct translation. We also have this other phrase called apapachar. To apapachar means to care for someone with such love, right? And if we know that someone has that, holds us up with that high regard, then whatever we do, just the fact that you're breathing is to be celebrated.
Yes.
right? So, Jisoo, what I'm going to say to you is take those small steps. Take the small steps. Today, acknowledge that you are precious. Tomorrow, decide this is one little baby step that I will do. You know, it's sort of like watching our eyelashes grow. They grow, they really do grow, but we don't sit there and stare at them all day, right? Sometimes my students are like constantly asking, I don't know what my dream is. How will I get there? Well, that's like staring at your eyelashes. Stop it, right? What I need you to do is trust that every single action, every single endeavor is contributing to your growth. You are an accumulation of experiences. And if I had time, Echika, I would sit and I'd want to hear your story. Because you are an accumulation of experiences.
Yeah.
And that's how we get. That's how we set our compass. That's how we set our direction. You don't have to know what the end point will be or how you're going to get there.
Yes.
But you have to pack your bags and be ready.
Be ready.
Be ready, right? Stop staring at your eyelashes growing.
That's so profound. Just celebrate the small wins, no matter how small they are. They're building into something, and just keep moving. No matter how little, just keep moving. And that's so profound. Thank you, Maria. We have this question. We have a lot of questions, Maria, already. Someone said, taking leadership positions comes with sacrifices. How do you balance it with career work? How do you balance it with career?
So I think that question is often asked of women. You know, as a female, how would I balance? Or sometimes females will say, well, I'm going to wait. I'm going to have my family first. I'm going to do this first. And then I'm going to, right?
Yeah.
I don't like, again, I'm going to ask you to reframe, throw the word balance out the window. As women, as men, as leaders, it's not about balancing. You're not making a cake where you have to measure every ingredient. Please, you're creating art. And for art, it takes this boldness of just splattering paint on the canvas and saying, okay, now what do I have and what will I add next? Right? So, I mean, I was a working mom with an infant. And my child went with me everywhere. And what was amazing was that there were always, usually women, in the back of a conference room that would say, I'll hold the baby, you go up and talk. Don't worry, we'll take care of the baby. You go up and do your thing, right? Or I take them to meetings with me, or, it's not about balancing. It's about saying, for this moment, 100%, I'm a mother. For this 1 hour, and then immediately out of that hour, now I'm your speaker, and you have me 1,000% right now. And then I'm going to go watch Netflix. That will have my attention 1,000%, right? So it's not about balancing, it's about expanding. It's about expanding our sense of self to realize how capable we can become. So my challenge to you is for you to ask yourself, how capable do I want to become? Do I want to become capable just 5%? And if that's all you want, then yeah, you can probably balance everything. But if your capacity to be capable is going to be closer to 99%, then it's about discipline of thought, discipline of focus. It's about that belief that at this moment, I am 100% here.
Thank you, Maria. That's so profound. We have another question from Juhi Tawar. I hope I pronounced that right. It says, hi, Maria. How can women define ourselves? Okay, I think you know the person. How can women define ourselves in this changing world post-COVID? How can we make sure that we contribute to reducing the 100-year average time it would take to reach gender
I believe that we are be giving a window of opportunity.
Gender parity.
Thank you for that question,
Hello?
Juhi. Yep. Thank you for the question, Juhi. So I believe we are being given a window of opportunity. And some of us in this window are facing many, many challenges. Some of us are coasting. Some of us are very comfortable. Some of us are struggling just day to day, almost survival. I think that, and your question was specific to women, I would say that this is the time. This is the time we have been waiting for. I would say to you what Martin Luther King said, and give me just a second.
Sorry.
We are the leaders we have been waiting for. So it's not about what else should I do? How should I do it different? It's about that sense of profound belief in your purpose to want to contribute, in your purpose to want to advance. And I know that it's not a selfish purpose. It's about wanting to bring one more and one more and one more along. You never know. I once was invited to give a talk at a teachers conference, 500 teachers from the state of Florida. And I wanted to go just because the conference was going to be held at Disney World. And I thought that would be fun. But I had to work all day, and that was okay. But, you know, once I was there and I set my mind and I set my intention, I said, my purpose here is to do exactly what you asked me at the beginning, Echika, about my purpose and intention. It was to touch one person. And that was my intention that day. So I spoke all day. I think I had 3 or 4 sessions, 100 teachers at a time. At the end of the day, a teacher came up to me. Actually, she was a vice principal. And she said, it was a Friday. And she said, before coming to the conference, I had turned in my letter of resignation.
Wow.
I put it on my principal's desk, knowing that he would see it first thing Monday morning. And she said to me, but after hearing you speak, I realized I have so much to contribute that no one can take my place today. She said, I'm going to beat him Monday morning to the office, and I'm going to take the letter back, and I'm not going to give up. I am here. I am here because I believe in the purpose that I have. And so I think as women, and Juhi's question was to us as women, I think as women, we have a purpose. And often that purpose has become invisible, or it's been renamed. You're a mother, you're a wife, you're a girlfriend, you're a secretary, you're this, you're that. I think we have to start naming each other. You know, I'm an innovator. I'm a change maker. I'm that individual who wants to raise the next generation of global leaders. That's who I am. I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you what I believe. So that's what I want to hear from Juhi and from everyone else.
Thank you. Thank you. We have another question. Someone says, Laurel says, how can we communicate our ideas to people who have different ideas? For example, politics. It's difficult when we have different opinions, especially with the fake news going on.
Laurel, that's a great question. And I wonder if that's Laurel from Singapore. I don't know. But what I would say to Laurel and to everyone else that's listening is that when we're in conversation with individuals that are so different from us, all we want to do is walk away. Do you know what I do, Echika? At that moment, what I do, I ask myself, can I hear this person's heart?
Wow, that's profound.
Can I hear their pain, their fear? Can I hear their confusion, their ignorance? Can I hear how frightened I make them? And can I hold them? Can I hold them in my heart?
Mm.
And sometimes that's a cab driver. Sometimes that's a political opponent. Sometimes it's a student that's driving me mad. Sometimes it's my son. I said, you know what, Santiago, today it was a challenge to love you. And he said, really? I said, I'm being real honest. It was. But love you, I do.
Mm.
But it's about listening to their heart.
Mm.
And until we start practicing that, I don't want to hear anything about conflict mediation and this and that.
That's right.
Because all of that is structural. And if we're going to be the change makers that we want to be, we have to be those listeners, the listeners of the heart.
That's so amazing, Mara. You're so rich in your soul. I can literally feel it. So I have this question from Gloria. She says, how can I empathize with or relate to experiences of others if I didn't experience them myself?
I think that that's a challenge that many of us that are globetrotters, many of us that are global citizens, where we're reaching out because of technology, because of travel, because of relationships, where we're reaching out to people that are different, right? I mean, look at the two of us at Cheka. I don't know your story, but my guess is that we probably have lots that's similar and lots that's different. And there may be ways for us to connect. I don't want to pretend to know that I know who you are as an African woman. And you may not know who I am as a Latina, who was raised in the United States in an era of discrimination and racism, and right? But if I can trust myself to share my narrative with you, if I can allow you and invite you to share your narrative with me, I don't have to pretend that I know what you've gone through. But the connection of heart is established. You have a narrative. Everyone listening has a story. And we have to get bolder and wiser about sharing our stories. Because if we're silenced by corporations, if we're silenced by politicians, if we're silenced by the people who have more and we have less, if we're silenced by those that are bigger victims, well, you haven't suffered as much as I have. Well, you know what? You're right. But don't silence me. So I think we have to become better, again, to listening, but to not have that fear of being silenced. Don't allow yourself to be silenced. That doesn't mean you should talk all the time. It means we have to learn how to listen. And it means we have to be courageous enough to share our narrative. What is your story?
So we have like about 8 minutes more. I'll just run through like 2 questions and then we can round off. But it's really been amazing, Maria. Thank you so much. Gina has a question. Gina says, I have a dream and I have a specific purpose of my dream. So I really try to take a small step every day. However, it is very difficult to keep going. And I always worry about if I'm doing the right thing or not. So my question is, how can I keep doing until I achieve my dream? I think you've touched on that, but if you could just...
And her name was Gina?
Gina, yes.
Okay. Gina, I'm going to talk to you directly right now. Gina, I need you to hear that I absolutely trust you. I trust that dream. I trust how magnificent you are. And I trust that you are a change maker that I've been waiting for. So you're going to have lots of obstacles and you're going to have lots of challenges, but you have a dream and you have a purpose. And please know that no matter what, naysayers may say to you, I believe you and I trust you.
Mm.
Gina, I'm going to close by telling you that you have to be careful of the cave people. CAVE, citizens against virtually everything. Okay?
Wow.
So the cave people are going to stop you. They're going to say, Gina, your dream doesn't make sense, or you're not smart enough, or rich enough, or old enough. And you know what? Who cares? They're cave people. And they only make up about 3.2% of the population. But they will take 80% of your energy if you let them. So beware. What do when I see cave people? I run away. I don't try to change them. I used to do that. I don't have time to do that anymore. So I trust.
Can you repeat what cave is? Citizens?
So citizens against
Okay, virtually everything. Okay, that's profound. Guys, you've learned a new one.
Optimistic and you seem so happy, but you just don't know how bad things are, right? They're the people that are going to say that webinar, wasn't really worth it, right? They're the ones that are going to say, nah, we've already tried that. We've done it. Don't believe it. You know what? Don't let them take your energy. You don't have an infinite amount. So protect it.
Yeah. So this is an interesting question, and I would like to hear your thoughts on it. It's anonymous, and the person says, how can a female be collaborative rather than competitive?
If the question is coming from a female, what I would say to you is be the first one to absolutely set the example. I don't care what everyone else is doing around you. It starts with me. It starts with you. It starts with Echika. It starts with Gloria, right? Be the first one. And guess what? Things will change.
That's fantastic. One more question. Still have a lot of questions, but guys, because of time and we have the next session, but I'll take this question. The person says, so I'm not reading this properly, but I'll just interpret what I think I see. How does one bridge the way one sees herself and the way others perceive her, if the only way one sees herself is different from the ways others perceive her? So it's almost like there's a perception of her and a perception of herself. How does she form a bridge?
There's someone that says who works with many young people, Latinas in the United States, in Colorado, and they say, we cannot be what we cannot see. We cannot be what we cannot see. And so the goal of that organization is to expose young women to role models. And I think Steering for Greatness does something similar. You're exposing young people to possibility, right? And my parents could have never seen me as a professor. Never. Not because they didn't want me to be, but that was so far-fetched. So, when I asked my mother what she wanted me to do, she says, I just want you to be a good wife. Learn how to cook, for goodness sakes. Learn how to wash clothes, right? To my mother, that was the definition of success, of achievement. To be the good female caretaker. And I don't fault her because that's all she knew. So don't blame and don't judge, but determine, have the conviction that your road, your path is going to extend further and will be broader. Be curious about the future. Find your voice, share your message, and strengthen your heart every day. Thank you all so much for those questions.
Thank you. So we've been given a little more time. Thank you, organizers. Yay! So we have so many interesting questions. I wish you could see this, Maria. So many interesting questions. Someone asked, he said, how can we prevent ourselves? This is a bit generic, but I think he or she wants to hear your views. How can we prevent ourselves from being manipulated by politicians, by history, by the news? There's so much that happens below that we can't see. as youths, how can we know what is true and what is not? What to believe and what not to?
Mm. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to say it again. Tell me who you are first. Tell me what your purpose is. Tell me what makes you precious. And based on that, you will be able to sort through what is of value to you. So you can chase the news. You can chase truth. I'm not big on chasing. I want to be able to hold dear to me my truth. So start with that. Share your voice. It goes back to your narrative, right? And yes, you're going to have to filter. You're going to have to learn to interpret. You're going to have to learn to be able to evaluate. But you'll be able to do that faster, quicker, and better once you know what you stand for. Because if you don't have that, then anything you read will shape you. Right. I guess that's what I am. Oh, yeah, I must believe that. Stop that nonsense. Right? I talk just like a mom. Stop it. What shapes you?
What shapes you? Very profound. Thank you so much, Maria. We have a question from Maria Guajardo. I hope I pronounced that right. Person says, when living a busy life, sometimes I forget the values I treasure or the goals. How do you remind yourself about your values?
You know, Mirai, I remind myself by surrounding myself with those individuals that I hold so dear. Echika, you probably don't know this, but when I finish my Zoom classes, I wave to my students and I tell them I love them. Now, I had no idea that this is what I would be doing, right? Teaching Zoom, I can barely turn the computer on. I mean, to be honest, this is serious. 3 weeks ago, I lost 35 students on Zoom. They like disappeared. I didn't know where they were. I mean, that's how bad I am, right? And yet, I got over that gap. I bridged the gap from what was familiar to what was unknown by trusting this is who I am. So I think, Mirai, we have to continue to, it just sounds like so simple, but it's actually one of the most difficult things to be honest, to be transparent, to have the courage to say, this is how I'm shaped by my ancestors, my mother, my grandmother. And I think that is extremely important.
Thank you so much, Maria. Someone asked this wonderful question. Mayan, I hope I pronounced that right. What are the keys of trying to connect with people who are arrogant with hearts? Or who are arrogant in heart? So I just think what's the key to connecting with arrogant people?
Okay, so you may not like this answer me. However, this is what I'm going to say. I have come to learn that when I encounter someone who's arrogant, they are reflecting me. Isn't that nasty? It's like, no, don't say that. I can't be arrogant, but I'm sorry, but that's what I've learned. So what I try to do is, yes, I get troubled by it, but I take a deep breath and I say, wow, can I listen to their heart? Can I listen to, when people are arrogant, it's because they feel less than, and so they have to promote themselves. So something inhumane is triggering them and their arrogance. So if we can hold that pose of humble inquiry, to really examine, to see it as a reflection and not personalize it. Isn't that the best thing? Don't personalize it. It's not personal, but it's a lesson to be learned. It's a lesson to be learned,
So so there's a question from Prashant Gupta. He says, How do you think we can inculcate the leadership qualities in schooling education amongst teenagers and work beyond daily curriculum? How do you think we can inculcate the leadership qualities in schooling education amongst teenagers and work beyond daily curriculum?
I am a big fan, Prashant, of the Brazilian educator Paulo Freire. And Paulo Freire believed that education, that in education, teachers and students have to be able to learn from each other. He also advocated that learning could not be just for learning's sake, but it had to be relevant. It had to be relevant to the world. It had to make sense and it had to make a difference. It had to be contributive. I really wish if I could wave a magic wand, I would ask students, demand more of your professors, demand more of your teachers. Do not allow them to coast. Ask them the hard questions. Ask them to take you down that journey of being critical thinkers and being expansive in thought. If all you're doing is memorizing, it's not going to work, because the world needs someone different than just someone who can memorize. We need innovators. We need change makers. We need those that inspire. Prashant, we need you in the corporate sector doing what you do best, which is to imagine and be curious. So demand that of your education. Demand that that sense of curiosity not be shut down, but be the foundation for inspiration.
That's right. That's right. Be the foundation for inspiration. You have that, guys? So, we have Laurel. Laurel has a question. She says, what do you do when you feel trapped internally, being you are in a place where you don't want to be in, especially during this time of COVID?
I think maybe, Laurel, many of us may be feeling that. Exactly. Many of us are feeling a sense of restrictedness. Many of us are feeling a sense of disconnectedness. Okay. Now is the time, Laurel, to be patient with oneself and to challenge ourselves to discover ourselves a little deeper, right? This is a time where we're going to discover what we can. This could be a time when we can discover more of us, right? It's like me discovering how to do Zoom classes. Oh my gosh. I mean, for me, it's so basic. I have to like not fall out of my chair. Seriously. I have to sit on 2 pillows right now. Yesterday, I fell out of my chair. So, I mean, so like, forget the technology. I just want to be able to stay balanced, right? So what do we do during this time? I think it's a time to almost imagine that you're in this 24/7 learning experience. Imagine that you asked to be presented with this learning opportunity in the year 2020, just before you were going to graduate or complete a project or go on to the next phase of your life. And now options have been taken off the table, those that were known. And you know what? That's okay. Take a deep breath. Honor the fact that you're breathing, that you're precious, that I love you, and imagine possibilities. And if they don't come to you, be patient. Just be patient. You just never know who you're going to meet. Today, I met Echika, and I am just like so happy, so happy, so happy, right? Because it's like a new friend on the other side of the world.
That's right.
That's what we have to be looking forward to.
Yeah. So great, Maria. Great so far. I have this question from Wei Homestead. I'm not sure I pronounced that right at all. Please, my apologies. Professor Maria, I would like to hear from you. How do we take the first step to overcome the fear, and how to maintain the fearless spirit and determination after? I think you've touched on it, but I think someone wants to know how do we maintain the fearless spirit and or determination thereafter?
You know, part of what I did, and maybe it'll be different for everyone, but I realized that fear was the enemy. I realized that fear was what I needed to be able to grapple with. It wasn't the long-term outcome or the project, but it was right here. It's sort of like, you know, when I went climbing, yeah, of all things, I went climbing the Himalayas. And one day they said, we're going to climb that mountain. I said, well, like, do we go halfway? They said, oh, no, no, no. We have to go to the top and come down the other side because we have to make camp on the other side. And I thought, I can't do that. I can't. And I was paralyzed, right? I was paralyzed. And I realized that the first step was just an acknowledging that the fear was the enemy. It wasn't my physical condition. It was what I imagined. So I think that's why I say, what relationship do you want to have with fear? Let's talk about that. We don't have time today, but I want you to consider, right? Imagine that fear is an entity. Do you want to hate fear? Do you want to be afraid of fear? Do you want to court fear? I chose to dance with it, right? You have to decide how you want to relate to fear.
Fear. I think that's so important. So we're going to take two more questions and then we round off. It's been, Maria, there are a lot of comments in the box. Everyone is saying thank you, thank you. Wow, you know, it's it's exciting. Someone said, I like the way she talks to the questioner. So, you know, when you talk directly to them, someone is saying she likes that. Thank you so much, guys. So there's a question from an anonymous attendee. The person says, most stories of leadership and success are backed by various support systems like friends and family or some life-changing events. How can we sustain our motivation and be successful had we never had support systems?
You know, there's another way to look at that question. Not everyone wants to be a leader. Not everyone believes they can be a leader.
Yes,
I
that's right.
would say to you that I was one of those that was a reluctant leader. I want someone to write a book about reluctant leadership because I would star in that book, right? It's almost as if everybody stood in a line, shoulder to shoulder, right? And then they said, okay, well, all the leaders, please take a step forward. And I just stood there because I thought, they are not talking to me. I'm not a leader. But what happened, Echika, was that everybody else took a step backwards and they left me in front, right? So that's to capture this idea that I did not want to be a leader. I didn't imagine myself a leader. And for many of us, that may be the case. I think we have to be able to question in this practice of leadership. So I don't think of it as a static, I'm a leader and you're not, but it's every day I'm given opportunities to practice leadership. How I go to the grocery store, how I speak to my son, how I speak to my students, how I sit down to write. All of that is a practice of leadership if I choose it to be. And so what I would suggest to you, others may not see you. And you know what, today, I guess I'm not really interested in that. What I want to know is, how do you want to practice leadership? And are you a reluctant leader? And if that's the case, then let's start there. Are you an arrogant leader? If that's the case, well, then let's start there. Are you a leader by authority and position? All right. But you know what? Strip that title away. Are you still a leader or not? So, yeah. How do we want to practice leadership? That's what I want you to face. Today, in the next hour, what can I do?
That's very profound. So it has to be a lot of work from us. From us, you know, we have to be determined to practice it, become unconsciously, you know, practicing, you know, the act of leadership. That's so profound, Maria. Um, we will take one question and then, you know, we'll have your final words, you know, before we go. Um, how do you work with people or collaborate with people who are self-centered, who are stealing your ideas in the process of promoting themselves? I'm sorry, guys. Or should one even work with such people just because we have to collaborate and make the world a better place? So the person is asking, how do you collaborate with self-centered people or people that steal your ideas?
Imagine if we reframed it. Imagine if we said, wow, I am so brilliant. Others covet what I create. Imagine if it was seen as a compliment and not an attack. Now, I'm not being Pollyannish. I'm not being so optimistic and positive that I'm going to say, well, that doesn't hurt my feelings, or I've never experienced that. I mean, I had my boss in one context say to me, why can't you just let the men take credit for your work? When he said that to me, I was aghast. I was ready to slap somebody, and I'm nonviolent, right? But at that moment, I was like going, oh, no, 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 that's not okay. And I realized that I was feeling insecure, that yes, there are structural elements in work environments that are toxic. I'm not saying that that's not true, that that's not real. And I don't know your case well enough to tell you what to do with the structural violence that an individual will feel that it's okay for them to steal from you. I can't talk to that. But what I can talk to is your heart. And if it feels violent, then how do you want to deal with that? You know, and it's all in perspective, right? Do you take a perspective of compassion? Do you take a perspective of, you got me, so I'm going to get you back? Right? So I think we just have to really be mindful.
Hello, Mary, can you hear me?
Yes. So I'll just finish the thought that we have to.
Can you hear me? Yes,
yes,
you can.
we have to be intentional. We have to pay attention, but with intention. We have to pay attention to what's happening and then have an intention set that says, like Michelle Obama says, you know, when they go low, we go high. There's nothing easy about that. But I believe it's how we have to go forward.
Hey guys, my network just became funny, but I guess Maria had answered that question. Thank you so much, Maria. Before Maria gives her final words, I just want to tell us a bit about Stirring for Greatness. The Future of Work Summit was brought to you by Stirring for Greatness Foundation. Stirring for Greatness Foundation has been responsible for impacting over 1,000 teenagers in Lagos, Nigeria, generally, and all over the world. And it's been on since 2016. That we have so many events lined up going forward. We want you to be a part of what we're doing. Please follow us on Twitter at Stare to Greatness. So Stare, STEER, number 2, and Greatness. Follow us on Facebook. Our handle is Stirring for Greatness Foundation. Follow us on Instagram at Stirring for Greatness, and LinkedIn at Stirring for Greatness Foundation. We normally have boot camps for teenagers. We have 2 boot camps every year, and we have seen the impact of these boot camps on teenagers. They have gone on to join very prestigious institutions all over, the world. One of the things I told Maria before this call started was how similar her Massachusetts program was with Stirring for Greatness, and the program opened her up to Ivy League colleges, and I've seen Stirring for Greatness do that also for teenagers. So please be a part of what we're doing on social media, and follow us closely. If you want to be part of our bootcamp, please send us a message on any of our social media handles and we'll be sure to get back to you. We're also working on an opening school support where we're thinking about ways to help schools during this COVID period, especially in this side of, of the continent. Maria, your final words. What are your final words to these amazing people, that have been listening to you? We've had so many comments. Everyone is blown away. I would personally say that, it's been an honor, having you on this session, and your soul is so rich. I feel like I need to have more conversations with you. You see beyond the physical. You just see through, people. And I think that's very amazing for a person, for a leader. And no wonder you've attained the heights you've attained, because you're very intentional about everything, that you do. What we would like you to leave us with your final word.
We started out by asking, how can we have a more equitable world? I would suggest to you that some individuals would say that, well, it's all about justice. But justice is just the laws. We can change laws, but that's not going to cure the ills that we face in our communities. Some would say, well, we need diversity, right? We need to have more diversity on our boards, in our companies, in our universities. I won't disagree, but what I would say to you is numbers alone, and we know this historically, you can be the majority in population, but that does not mean that you have any power. So we need to move beyond to the point of inclusion. Not only do I want space at the table, but I want more tables. And I want a view of the future and a view of the present that honors my voice. And that would be my determination, my request, my desire, my wish, that every single one of you has a place at the table so that your voice can be heard. And that will come. So please be ready. Choose to be ready. Choose to have a voice. Choose to have a connection to your own heart so that your heart can hear the heart of the other. Thank you, Echika, so much. And Basula, thank you so much for today's opportunity. I loved being with all of you.
Thank you so much. And I think your goal has been achieved. You said you wanted to touch one person. Maria, what I see in the chat, I see a flood of things, and I think you surpassed your target. You had everyone saying it was worth our time. Guys, please, virtual claps for Professor Maria. Virtual claps. Couldn't take your questions. We have to run because there's another session. People are saying thank you very much, Maria. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. See you all soon. So people, get ready for the next session. I think it's happening by 3 o'clock. Be right on time. We're having another amazing time with still on the Future of Work Summit. Thank you so much, Maria. It's been an honor moderating this session and speaking with you. My name is Echika Obidiapo, and once again, good afternoon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.